Welcome to the Beats and Balance podcast, a space for conversations at the intersection of creativity, healing, and community. Each week, we sit down with artists, healers, and everyday people to explore stories of transformation, resilience, and the ways we use creativity to survive and thrive.
Welcome to the Beats and Balance podcast. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Tara Thompson, a trauma-informed yoga teacher, retreat host, and founder of The Quest Yoga, a healing-centered practice built from the ground up from her own lived experiences. Tara's journey through trauma led her to a deep promise that if she made it through, she wouldn't just survive, she would rise with purpose. Now, years later, she holds space for others to heal, move, and reconnect with themselves. In this conversation, we'll talk about what it really means to heal, how trauma-informed yoga supports the process, and the gritty, beautiful truth of showing up for yourself after harm. So let's get into it. Tara, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm super excited to talk with you about your journey.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
And you're coming in. Yeah, thank you. You're coming in from Ireland, yeah?
Yes. So it's evening time here. It's 7 p.m. here, and I'm Irish, and you know there's such a need in Ireland for the work that I do. Look, to be honest, there's a need for the work that we do in every country. Let the truth be told, but Ireland is a place that really needs a lot of support. So, you know, some of our stuff that we're dealing with, historical, generational. Yeah, look, I'm not messing. I'm getting straight into it. That was just a little introduction, and I'm going straight into generational trauma. Forgive me.
No, it's real. I think that people that are listening here from America might not know the full history of Ireland. And it is a place that there is a lot of generational trauma.
Yeah.
I think that it's something similar to like what Black people experience in the States. Is the same kind of history in terms of like broken families and state violence and things like that.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of commonalities.
Yeah, and I think
that's how I got into yoga.
Yeah, and it's I think that's why Irish people are very resonating with what's happening in Gaza right now. You know, we have our own story of oppression, and we can, there is a huge love and affection for the Palestinians, and it's something that everyone is wanting to get behind. We're trying to get our government to have a day where everything drops, pens down, tools down, everything. We just need to get out on the streets and show our support for something that's happening in our time that just should not be happening, quite simply. So, you know, when I think about going back to sort of Ireland, and there are some harsh statistics around trauma, I suppose, in Ireland. One of the statistics that I think about a lot is there's an Irish charity called 1 in 4. And sometimes you kind of think to yourself, well, why would a charity be called that? Why 1 in 4? Well, the reason it's called 1 in 4 is 1 in 4 Irish adults will have been the victim of abuse before the age of 18. 1 in 4. So for a population of Ireland, that relates to about 25%, 1.2 million Irish people. There's another statistic that's 1 in 3. 1 in 3 Irish women will have been the victim of sexual, psychological, or emotional violence. And that, 33% of the Irish population, that's 1.5 million Irish women, of a population of a country that's quite small. These are stark numbers, and that's why I think I'm very passionate about what I do. I think what the work we do is needed and essential, especially in these times.
No, 100%. I think it's great to start the conversation this way, because I think the history really impacts what we're dealing with in the present day. And a lot of people don't pay attention to that. And it's not easy to, because everybody's caught up in the day-to-day and their own issues. But a lot of the issues that we are dealing with are historical and systemic based, and if you can't get to the root of the trauma, then you can't really heal it. So I think that's why the work is super important, and also naming that these traumas are not individual failures. A lot of the time it's because of much larger state sanctioned issues. So definitely that's the reason that we created Beats and Balance, really, is to create a place where there can be conversations like this across different communities, where we can realize that, wow, we really have a lot more in common than we might have thought. I think this is a really great example of that. And Ireland really has been showing up. I love to see it, and Scotland too, with Trump being in Scotland right now. But being in the States and seeing how other countries are really turning out and being on the right side of history has been really great to see, and like has kind of restored some of our faith in humanity, I think.
Yes.
And Ireland has definitely been one of those countries that has been standing up, especially with the genocide going on in Palestine. So definitely love to see that. I'm also like a fourth Irish, so shout out to the
family.
yeah, my mom. I know my mom was adopted, and her adoption papers mentioned that her mother was Irish. So I'm like trying to figure out how I can
Oh, that's
get some
amazing.
citizenship so I can, so I can escape the U.S.
Do you know where
Yeah,
you're from? Where in Ireland?
I have no idea any of that. I just know what like the adoption papers from my mom said. So that's
Oh,
what like my adopted grandmother used to always make a point to like for like St. Patrick's Day or whatever, like remind me like you're like part Irish, right? So like you should
wow.
you should
I
represent.
love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, so that's why I know a little bit about the history and
Mm,
it's intense, the history of Ireland and the famine and the alcoholism and things like that,
yeah,
and the war and all those things. So
yeah.
talk about a little bit your journey with
Mm,
creating Quest Yoga. Was it?
yeah.
I'm sure it's not just because of like the historical trauma of the country, but like
No,
your own
no,
personal
it's my own. Yeah.
life history and things like that.
Exactly. You know, I'm a what am I now, 48-year-old woman, and I think my whole story started 4 years ago. I don't think I'm different to most people that struggled during COVID. You know, pandemic for most of us was kind of confronting. For me, I was a single woman who lived alone, and all of a sudden, all of the things that I used as crutches and distractions, they were all taken away from me. And I found that it culminated with one evening where I had a really bad anxiety attack. You know, one of those sort of, oh, just you can't breathe, you can't, you know, there's no, you almost feel like there's no coming back from it. But actually, when I look back on that now, it was actually the starting point for my exploration and my healing journey. I
Mm,
I was sort of climbing the corporate ladder and perceiving all of these things that I wanted and getting these things that I wanted and being miserable and sort of saying, well, hang on, why wasn't I sort of happy when I was receiving all these things? But I had pretty bad anxiety and it culminated with that
mm,
sort of bathroom floor anxiety attack. And that brought me on a
mm,
journey of therapy and sort of, it was almost like a lot of things were aligning. I decided to make a decision to stop drinking. So I did like a dry January in maybe 2021. And as an Irish woman, deciding to be a non-drinker, you know, is almost requiring a lot of explanation, but kind of stuck with
yeah.
it, found meditation and really found it, you know, when I think about my trying meditation in the past. I think I was kind of one eye open, one eye closed, like wasn't really trying it. So
Mhm.
all these things sort of felt like they were coming into place for me. Started my therapy journey, sort of stopped, put down the crutches and put down the things that were by means of a distraction. And I had this memory surface actually one afternoon while I was reading a book, and it was a book that brought you back to an experience of being your younger self, your inner child, and trying to think of a
Mm,
memory where you felt sad, lonely, or upset. And of course, for me, I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to remember anything. I don't remember my childhood, but this sort of very visceral, fleeting image but also a more visceral experience happened to me where I had this sort of snippet of something happening to me, which was just jarring. That set me on a different road of exploration, of trying to unpack what essentially was my story. So what happened to me was that as a child, I was abused, but I completely
mm,
disassociated from that memory altogether. And it only sort of started to resurface as a tiny snippet what am I now, 48? So this is like 4 years ago. As a 44-year-old woman, you know, it was
mm,
almost like, I almost like to describe it as an archaeological dig. It was literally like trying to find fossils because my story had been sort of buried, I suppose, for so long. And now
mm,
now that I understand the term dissociation, I understand that my mind disassociated from my body as a form of almost protection. I almost like to think it's like two parts.
Mm-hmm.
And over a very long period of time, I discovered EMDR, eye movement desensitization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was through that sort of painstaking process that I uncovered my story. And as a 48-year-old woman, understanding that something happened as a child that really framed my whole life subconsciously, because I didn't have the
Mm-hmm.
conscious awareness of it, it actually did impact my entire life subconsciously. So that's, I suppose, the core of my business, the core of the heart of the Quest Yoga, Tenora, because it's my story. It's what happened to me and on
Mm-hmm.
my own healing journey. It was lonely and confusing and so many things, that I promised myself that when I made it out the other side, I would come out of it with a light, to be determined to
Mm-hmm.
come out of it with a light. Yeah.
I love that. I think that that is something that will resonate with a ton of people. Anybody that's been on any kind of healing journey, I think remembers the loneliness and the isolation that you can feel in those times. I think it's super important. Though what you're doing is like taking that and kind of alchemizing the pain and making something better and healing beneficial for other people. So that's super huge. Like, how were you able to maintain kind of that light or that idea that there would be another side and not just become jaded or sink into depression or any of those things?
It's a big question, I think that your self-care, I think the idea that healing is, you reach a certain part and then you're done, I think it's this is I know from my lived experience, and I know for me as a person and as a being, that my healing journey will continue for the rest of my life. And I now, as an embodied trauma informed yoga teacher, I'm very aware of my body, so almost when I feel overwhelmed, overstimulated, all the overs, all the overs, I will first get my clues from my body. It might be, clammy hands, my eye might start twitching a bit, tummy's a bit unsettled.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things I spent my life experiencing, but also my life ignoring. So now,
Mm-hmm.
in answer to your question, I suppose I see those things now and I recognize them, and I sit with myself and hold my heart a lot. I mean, probably who know me might think I have some kind of heart issue because I'm forever holding my heart. They're probably thinking, what is she doing? And I
Oh
have
yeah.
very strong faith. Prayer is very important to me. And I think that I always have to come back to self, because I think that you can get lost in, I have a big mission. I do. I believe that this is, the quest was born out of my own quest, my own healing journey from trauma. And I have a big idea and I have big plans for it, but I can't let myself get lost in it. And I think that sometimes is the thing where, we're trying so hard to bring something to life or to have this big vision that, at the end of the day, our own healing is so important too, right? And I don't believe that we're ever finished with our own healing.
Mm. No, I think that that definitely resonates with me. I've been at that period where I've been like, oh, I did it. Like I made it, I healed, and then the universe will throw you a test and you'll be like, damn,
Mm,
back at square one. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of give up, not realizing that life is kind of cyclical and you're just going to constantly be
yeah.
hopefully spiraling up, but you'll keep returning to those same kind of lessons and making sure that you pass those tests. That's super inspiring. Let's talk about the Quest Yoga. Like, can you tell us about the program, how it works,
Of
how you came up
course.
with it?
Of course. So initially, on one of my darkest days, Tenora, I was on my knees. And, when you're on your knees, you're definitely in the perfect position to pray, aren't you? So I prayed, and it was a dark day. And I said to myself, like, God, just show me, like, I don't know if I can do this. And I genuinely need help. And I felt like
Mm-hmm.
I heard this voice from within. I actually do think it was divine. Like, I do think it was divine guidance. And this voice said to me, Tara,
Mm-hmm.
what did you used to do when you were a child? And, irritated when you're in the depths of something, you're kind of snapping back saying, oh, for God's sake, like, how is that going to help me now? But I kept asking. And the truth was, I always wanted to be a writer. If you'd asked me as an 8-year-old or as a 10-year-old, Tara, what do you want to be or what do you want to do? It wasn't a ballerina or a or a doctor I wanted to be a writer. And it was on that day, that really dark day when I was on my knees, that I decided to write. So the quest initially became a book. It is a book that I thought the quest was going to be a book. I thought it was my story was going to be the way that I helped people by telling my story, writing the detail of the healing journey. I've traveled all over the world on retreats, and it can be almost like an educational, informative healing journey because of the breath work and the diet and the meditation, all the things I tried, because my goodness, there's nothing I didn't try, to be honest. After the book was I've written nearly a manuscript, I sort of sat with it and felt very much like this needs to be something else first. One or two of the stark experiences I had with yoga, especially on my healing journey at different events or retreats or what have you, as a survivor, and I'll get to when we spoke about trauma-informed yoga, but as a survivor, I'm a CSA survivor. So as a survivor in a class where there's where it's a yoga practice, I am completely uneasy at the idea of a yoga instructor potentially at any time putting their hands on me without permission. And at one of the retreats, Tinora, I was on, I had that experience. And as a survivor, I was on my own healing journey at the time, still am. I was in the depths of it then though, and for someone to have, and it wasn't I wasn't aware that they weren't coming towards me. I wasn't physically aware of their presence because they weren't in front of me. They were behind me. So for someone to have put their hands on me in a physical yoga practice was while I was in the midst of my own journey of healing from my own trauma, was actually quite a jarring experience. And it was in that moment.
Yeah, triggering.
Right, exactly. And I guess it was in that moment that I sort of thought to myself, maybe the quest is more than a book. Maybe the quest is. So yeah, that's kind of where it came to life.
That's lovely. I mean, not lovely that you had to go through that experience, but I think the realization that it wasn't the original thought only, but like being able to expand on that because of something that happened to you, and the realization that like these spaces are needed, especially for folks that have experienced trauma. I have CPTSD from childhood trauma, so I 100% can resonate with that feeling of if somebody were to come up behind me and I didn't know, like I would definitely like I would be completely freaked out. And I didn't do yoga for a very long time because it was something that's very uncomfortable for folks, I think, that have trauma. Sitting with yourself can be extremely uncomfortable. And like even just like, when you have trauma, it lives in your body. So I had like back pain since I was a little kid. You don't know where that source comes from until you start learning about trauma and things like that. But for me, yoga was always just so extremely uncomfortable that I just couldn't like fathom doing it. And so it took like the learning about it through a trauma-informed approach. My late wife, was a yogi and also somebody that experienced a lot of trauma. So she was the person that introduced me to it. And really opened my eyes to being like, oh, this is something that actually is what I need. Like I need to learn how to sit in the discomfort. To be able to heal it. But you can't get to that point unless you find a safe space, to explore that. So
Amen.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah, amen. I agree with that completely. I'm doing a charity event shortly for Women's Aid, which is an Irish charity that supports women. We try and just, have a constant free phone number that women can go to, advocates for women, all of this incredible stuff. And I've called the event Safe to Soften because I agree wholeheartedly with you. Safety is one of my brand values because safety is so important to me. I mean, if someone can make me feel safe, and a lot of it can be around your own safety, of course, but safety is huge, isn't it? It's just like everything.
Yeah. Especially if it's something that you feel like you've not experienced in your life the first time you experience. It can be jarring and uncomfortable, but then like once you realize what you've been missing, it's like, okay, like now I am somebody that like loves to sit in silence and stillness and
Mm.
in nature just by myself. But it took years. It took years for me to get to that place where I could like not be fidgeting around and just be able to just sit with myself.
I get you. And I
So
think
I think that's why I saw.
I love that because I think that for me as well is exactly why I avoided meditation, because I was like you. I was like,
Mhm.
there was fidgety and there was things and I was distracted. I was like, it was that very moment that I was like, oh, I need to clean my toilet or, like I need to do whatever rather than, yes, I really relate to that. I really do.
Yeah. So how were you able to balance like your own continued healing work? Because like you said, like it is a journey, but also being able to now hold space for others with their healing without burning out
Sure.
or causing yourself harm.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's a really important question. So, the EMDR therapy is a very, I'm not a therapist. I'm not going to claim to be a therapist. I speak about EMDR on very basic terms, so my
Yeah.
therapist was incredible, but I genuinely do feel like an EMDR therapeutic setting almost has an element of it comes up, the story comes up, and there's almost like a sense of, I'm really going to be very intentional about how I say this because it's very important that it's intentional, that, the big emotional heaviness of the story almost is like a cloak and, is just a little lifting of that. I am a Reiki 2. I have had my Reiki 2 training. I don't advertise that I don't have that anywhere that I am offering Reiki. That wasn't the purpose for me having that training. The purpose of me having that training was actually to sit in my own power, and sit almost like an emotional sort of bubble around myself. And I'm very intentional about the
Mm.
spaces. If I'm honest, initially as a new business, I kind of was the yes lady and I was saying yes to everything and I had to sort of sit with myself. And again, having been sort of disconnected from my body for most of my life, I'm so grateful that I am now in connection. And it comes back to those things we spoke about, like I will feel like my body will tell me first if I'm overwhelmed. My mind will probably be catching up
Mhm.
second, but it will be, you know, my knees are going to start paining. I'm going to have the back stuff going on. The twitchy eye is a dead giveaway, but just this overwhelming sense of just not feeling, but putting for any of us who do this work, we mustn't get lost. Like our self and our being, they are vital. Like all those sayings and quotes, you can't pour from an empty cup. All those things are so true,
Mhm.
so, so true. But I try, I guess I try and do my best to mind my own energy. And I very
Mm.
intentionally do certain practices before I hold space. Very, very intentional. I
Mm.
don't just sort of rock into a space and put down mats. There is a lot more intention on my side.
Love that. I think that's something that a lot of people that get into healing work struggle with is like taking care of themselves and putting kind of the oxygen mask on first, like they say at the airport. You have to put the oxygen mask on first before you help others, or else you'll pass out, right?
Right.
So I think that that is a huge key that a lot of people miss is like there is yes healing and these spaces exist, and people love to go to them, but also be mindful that the people that run them also need the break and the healing too
Mm.
to keep running.
What's it like, Tenora, in
I also like I
the States at the moment with regards to wellness? Like in Ireland, the industry is a little saturated. And what I mean by that is
mm,
there is experiences that I know of and friends of mine have had. And I've got friends who are very well informed in this space as well, that there are people who are holding space, perhaps with the intention I'm not sure is entirely pure. The
mm,
wellness
mhm,
has become saturated and there, I feel, I mean, I personally had an experience where I went to India with a group of women only just the beginning of this year in January. And our host was not, she was not in, she didn't have the skill set to hold a group of women. It culminated with her
Mm,
leaving the retreat early. So we were on the other side of the world,
mm,
as a group of women
yeah,
without our host, and those stories aren't they're not that uncommon. I just feel that
yeah,
a regulation in this industry, I think, is vital. And I think that, ask for testimonials, do your research, all these things are so important because wellness and has become almost like a buzzword. And, suddenly you can do an
hmm
online training and suddenly go and say you're holding a retreat. But like, where is I don't know. I was curious, like, are you seeing that too? Is your experience that that's a bit saturated and are there people, I don't know. Yeah.
yeah. I think yes. The short answer to that definitely is yes. I think capitalism is like a huge thing. Like there's like the huge wellness capitalism boom where people kind of are looking at it as a fad.
Mm,
I think I don't know if it's the in the United States, right? We have a huge issue with joblessness, right? And so I think there's this hustle culture that has come up where everybody's kind of trying to sell and
mm,
create their own businesses and do whatever they can to kind of survive. And the detriment to that is, like you mentioned, people can take like a 1 day class and all of a sudden they're saying they're an expert and then they're actually
mm,
hurting the people that they're supposed to be helping because they don't really know what they're doing.
right.
So yeah, I've been in communities where that's been a huge problem, where people are giving advice on things like relationship advice and their own life looks crazy and you're just like, what, like what
Right.
gives you the authority like that?
Right.
That's definitely a huge issue.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, like you said, like it's very important to do research and make sure that you are going with people that can keep you safe. Like I can't imagine going to India and just being stranded like that. That sounds like a nightmare and a half. So yeah, I think that is definitely a risk. I think regulations, like I don't think there are really many in the States. Even when it comes, like I have a Reiki certification too. What does that really mean? Who certified it?
Right.
There's no real regulations for that. So like depending on who you go for your certifications, I don't know what somebody else's experience was getting there. You know what I mean? So like all of these things,
Sure.
I think that that's true. It's a real issue. And it's hard because we live in such an oversaturated environment with the internet and everybody's trying to advertise everything
Yeah.
and unless you're doing due diligence and research, it's easy to fall for whatever and
Yes.
get scammed or God knows what.
Yeah.
Especially with
Oh,
spirit, like there's a bunch of like spiritual people that'll DM you saying like, send me all this money and I'll tell you your life's future. All like the same
I
kind of thing with
know.
that. So
And what annoys me about that is like, people, especially I just remembering on my own healing journey at different stages, I would have done anything and I would have tried anything because I was sad, I was confused, I was vulnerable, and I just get very protective of people in that state because I was that person, and I just feel like, yeah,
yeah.
I feel quite protective of that space, and I believe it's an honor and a privilege to hold space for people. And you don't mess with someone on a healing journey. You do not, you absolutely do not.
Yeah, no. That's really valid. It is an extremely vulnerable position to be in, and it is easy to take advantage of people in those situations. So, yeah, that's a huge problem.
Mm.
I would just say to people out there, like, just that, like you said, do your research
Oh, 100%.
and make sure
Yeah,
that you know who you're going with, especially if you're going out of the country. 100%. If we're doing
100%.
a retreat in Costa Rica and we paired up with somebody that already has their own practice down there,
Amazing.
I did that because I actually went on that retreat and I had the experience and I was like, okay. So then I invested in that retreat and then we partnered and started doing our own. So like I personally went on the retreat first,
I
experience
love
for
that.
myself
I love
before
that.
I was like, hey, I'm going to invite people to come down here and do that. So
I
I
love
just think,
that.
yeah, if you're doing this work, please keep your integrity intact.
Yes.
Because
Amen.
it can be detrimental and cause a lot of
Yes.
harm.
It really can. It
Uh,
really can. We have issues in Ireland at the moment of where there's a sort of plant medicine, like, Ireland has I'm
Mm,
not even going to claim to know. I've got a friend who could like speak for hours about this stuff, but we have our own plants and like powerful healing qualities of these incredible Irish plants, but yet we're now
I had
all
no idea.
obsessed with, yeah, and I don't get me wrong, I love cacao, so I'm not going to diss cacao for a second, but there's all these, opportunities of going for a weekend and trying some kind of plant thing, and that has hallucinogenic effects on people, and someone suddenly unheld, unminded,
Yeah.
unsafe in an environment and I just, that just is, that's something that I'm a little passionate about. And I just think it's very important that people are safe and provided the comfort and the safety that they deserve.
Yeah, 100%. I think that one of the reasons that your story stuck out to me is because I think that there is a huge need for more trauma-informed care in
Mm,
all aspects. Because I think majority of human beings on this earth are traumatized, whether they know it or not.
yeah,
We're all moving from a place of trauma. And like you said, it impacts your life in so many ways, seen and unseen. And so I think a lot of people are desperate for like a quick fix or, I don't know what's
mhm,
wrong with me, but I know that something's wrong and I can, go do ayahuasca and it's going to fix my life. And these plants, I think, do definitely have amazing healing properties. But like you said, like if you're going into a situation unheld, if you're going into a situation with people that don't know what they're doing, or if you're doing
yes,
it by yourself and you're not
yes,
really fully aware, then you can have definitely horrible experiences
a
that
hundred
can set you
percent.
back. So
Yeah, yeah.
I definitely, yeah, I'm an advocate for people doing everything with full education and
Me
awareness.
too. Me too. Me too. And you know
But
what?
I didn't know that Ireland had that.
Yeah, about the plants.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like everything from like a dandelion to a different, like there's so many Irish grown plants that have so many healing and powerful properties. But right now in Ireland, they're in the wellness world, like cacao is a huge thing. It's very popular in Ireland. Like there are cacao ceremonies every
Mm,
weekend, you name it, they're popping up everywhere. But if you actually went to a botanist or someone like who actually has history and story of Irish own, and even I just think sometimes, we can look outside of what's actually on our own doorstep. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I think that's fascinating. I think that's also another layer of the capitalism wellness issue is that like a lot of these people are using these substances from different countries, not harvesting them sustainably, causing issues for locals there. And it's like
mhm.
you can also find like healing in your own neighborhood, in your own country if you
Yes,
do that research. So
yeah,
yeah, I think that's something that people should also be wary about is like sustainability and like, harvesting these plants, what it does to local populations, what it does to the people that have to work there. Like I was reading or I was watching this documentary on like frankincense and how it's like become like gang wars over frankincense in like
wow,
Kenya because it's become such a boom for the essential oil business that now it's like it's ruining these people's lives who used to just be regular like frankincense tree farmers or whatever.
oh my goodness,
So yeah, I think it's not you're not really doing spiritual work if you're causing chaos and
yes,
problems all around the world just so that you can have
yes,
some, essential
yeah,
oil or some cacao. So I think that's something to definitely take into account is that spirituality is supposed to be healing for everybody. It's not really healing if you're the only one benefiting. So yeah, I think that's a great point. Let me see. What is your long-term vision for the Quest Yoga and for your practice and what you're doing?
oh, okay, I love this question. I am someone who's navigating the working full time in a finance role, and the Quest Yoga is the job that fills my soul. I've got like the corporate Tara, and I've got the Tara that absolutely whole life being comes alive when I do this other work. So I
Mm,
celebrated a year in business, literally a month ago.
congrats.
Thank you. And I have a mission to make trauma-informed yoga at the forefront of every wellness program in Ireland, every wellness program. So, there are wellness festivals. There's some big wellness festivals here in Ireland. Trauma-informed care doesn't get a mention. In
Mm,
in corporate, in the corporate world, I feel that I see a lot of burnout. Exactly what happened to me in 2020. People are just exhausted actually, from being on this
hmm.
wheel. And I think that trauma informed yoga should be in any wellness program. I'm going back to college to do a postgrad in workplace wellness in September. I'm kind of hoping like that
Very cool.
that will be able to sort of leverage, the corporates really want, to see that kind of stuff. I think they're more into that sort of like, I don't know what's credibility, I suppose. The truth is,
Mm.
I think I learned more from my own healing journey than I'll ever learn from a book or from college or a postgrad. But I think that this education piece is going to give me the leverage that I would like to open doors into some of the large corporate organizations, and a corporate wellness officer or consultant would be where I'd like to see myself go. I also would love to go back and write that book and finish that book. I believe that book is going to be a powerful read for people. I believe in divine guidance, and I believe God has a plan for me. That saying, you make a plan and God laughs. Like you can be like rigid in
Mm.
your sort of, and it's sort of like I paraphrase, and I can't remember the exact, but it's around the you make a plan and God laughs. But I do believe that that book will be published. But my mission is trauma informed. That's the plan. Yeah.
I love that. Such a need. I mean, it's a global need, but definitely like in Ireland, like you said, with history there. Let me ask you a random question. How is yoga and trauma informed care being perceived in Ireland? Like, is it something that people, when they hear about it, are open to, or is it something that people are kind of suspicious of?
Yeah.
It being like a deeply like religious Catholic country,
Yeah. Great
does
question.
that like cause
Yeah,
issues?
really great question. When I first set up my practice I was a traditional yoga teacher, and I kind of did the weekly classes, and I kind of quickly realized that the retreat space was where I wanted to be. But actually, interestingly, I had a comment from a lady when I said I'm very open about being trauma informed. It is what I am, and I'm very proud to say that I don't shy away from that at all, and wear it like I'm so proud of it, of that being who I am. But this lady said to me, "Oh, and people come." And I said, "Oh, yeah, people come." And she was like, "Even when you say it's trauma informed." And I was like, and this was a really lovely, educated woman. And I remember sort of stopping in my tracks and thinking, wow, wow. I mean, and
Yeah.
we genuinely have a long way to go, I think that what happens is I have people that come to one of my events, and thank God they come back. I have a very good sort of, I don't know, you call it retention, or that sounds too corporate for the work I do, but people come
No, yeah.
and they come back, so I just feel that, honestly, I feel like I'm only a year in business, and I'm only dipping my toe, like I'm only scratching the surface with this stuff. I feel Ireland has come a long way. We've got a lot to do, but definitely have come. When you think about a few years ago when we all voted yes for gay marriage, like to think that in a society that would be
Hmm.
intrinsically linked to religion, and all this, we are a society that's progressive. We are, but when it comes to this stuff, Tinora, we have a long way to go. I'm still
Yeah.
in
It's
Ireland.
generational.
I'm still very niche. There isn't. It's coming. I'm delighted that people are becoming. It's becoming more. But what I do is still a little bit niche, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be niche.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that I was wondering about because I know that like I come from a religious upbringing and things like yoga were kind of looked at as like not witchcraft, but like definitely not like something
Yeah.
something they cared about or they took seriously. Yeah, I'm always interested to see how people are able to kind of overcome their backgrounds, learn about something new that ends up kind of being beneficial to them and sharing that with others and fighting back against kind of that generational pushback of like, this is something new, we don't want it. And being like, no, like you need it. Like,
Yeah.
so I think that's really, really great. All right, before we wrap up, is there anything that you have going on that you want to let people know about or tell people where they can find more of your work?
Sure. Yeah, sure. I mean, if anyone is just to speak a tiny bit about what trauma-informed yoga is, it's sometimes people just hear it, it sounds a bit faddy, but it is an evidence-based healing modality. The main premises of it are choice, empowerment, and safety. And there is no physical assist ever in the classes. So you will know in my classes, you'll know where I am at all times. I tend to try and stay at the front of the class and I don't engage in walking around at any point of the class, especially during things like, Shavasana or anything like that, So if anyone's curious about trauma-informed yoga, there is, I'm sure, a ton of practitioners. I did my own training in the States because it wasn't available in Ireland. So my teacher, Zabi
Mm.
Yamasaki, is an American practitioner and she is, she's more of a trainer now. But she's incredible. But in terms of if people want to stay in touch or keep an eye on what I'm doing, you'll catch me at the Quest Yoga, www.thequestyoga.com. I'm the Quest Yoga on Instagram. I do a monthly newsletter where I share some of my writings and stuff like that. So the website will bring you there. So that's where you'll find out a bit about me or a bit more about me. You probably know tons about me.
Yeah. And we can stay in touch until that book is published and we'll know where to buy it. Because I think that definitely is something that will help tons of people. One thing that's been interesting in doing this podcast, I kind of just we put out like a general call for like stories about creative survival. And there's been such a thread with everybody that I've spoken to.
Oh, yeah.
Like these same kind of themes keep coming up. And so I feel like it's such a sign that it's a need and that everybody's kind of like on the same wavelength and wanting to have the same kind of conversations. I think the more stories, the better it is for everybody to get that sense that like you're not alone out there. All of us have, I think that everybody in the world has trauma. I mean, that's my personal opinion. But if you really sit and hear these stories, I think that something will resonate with you. I think we all have experiences that if we listen to other people, we'll be like, oh, we have more in common than we thought we did. And I think that's really the point, right?
When I look back on my own experience and who I am now, I think I've reached a stage as a person, as a woman, that I am more my authentic self now than I've ever been in my entire life. Yeah, I despite going through the darkest time, genuinely, like the darkest, wasn't sure I would make it through. I did. And the truth is, you will too. And you'll find the people there are people out there that are, have huge integrity and huge compassion as practitioners, as therapists, as priests, as spiritual, I just think that everything starts with just being a little bit curious and taking that one step and making that phone call to a therapist, to a yoga instructor, in terms of coming to a yoga practice. Everything starts with that first tiny step. And while things might be dark right now, from personal experience, I am now sitting in more light than I could ever have imagined.
I love that. I feel like that is a wonderful testimony to end on. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and you're proof. And me too. I've been in those situations on the floor too, where you think that nothing is gonna change and there's no way you can go on. And that's how this podcast was actually born.
Wow.
Through going through the trauma of losing my wife to cancer. So I've just, recently been in that space. So to hear you say that, and it's just like confirmation to me of like, yeah, this is the right track because we're all kind of in it together and we're not always aware of that when we're going through it. But then once you're on the other side and you start hearing other people's stories, I think it's extremely helpful to not feel so alone. So thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing with everybody your story.
My pleasure.
Because it is going to help people. Yeah, it'll ripple out in ways that you have no idea. So yeah, thanks for being with us. And for everybody listening, thank you so much. And we will be back next week.
Our roots run